Hi guys, welcome back to Just Talking, where I talk how you news sometimes listen. Today we're discussing the future and the history of the Wild Mouse at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, which is in the northwest of England along the coastal town of Blackpool. And if you do like this sort of content, make sure to like, comment any suggestions for future history videos, and subscribe for more regular uploads. So let's get into its construction and its opening. So before it opened, Jack Ratcliffe had to refurbish the ghost train to move it up slightly to make way for the coaster, and this was in 1957. And the construction and design for the coaster began in-house in the park, so none of the parts were actually shipped in from a different country, unlike some of the newer rides at the park. And it was started in 1955 under the designer Frank Wright. And it would open in 1958, 3 years after its sort of starting idea, and was the first major ride to open since the Second World War. And it was one of the more adult coasters it was advertised as, but it wasn't exactly the biggest and the tallest, standing at just 50 feet. And unlike the other models seen today and before, riders sat in a single file fashion, and it was of course a wooden Wild Mouse, and most Wild Mouses are made out of metal now. The first major refurbishment was taken place in the 1960s by the Valair brothers, and these were famous for the creation of the two flat rides, Sky Wheels and Space Wheels. Here you can see, I believe, Space Wheels here, which is a sort of ride that takes riders on a sort of Ferris wheel style ride, and basically takes them around on this bigger sort of structure whilst also going around on a smaller structure here. Before the switchbacks, which is basically where the car will randomly turn 180 degrees, seen here, a large drop alongside a smaller drop was added, and this enlarged the ride's track by a third to make it 1,266 foot of track, and this can actually be seen on the historical plate that was awarded to Wild Mouse. Of course, that isn't still standing due to the demolition of the ride. And some accounts say that this was due to the Valair's other Wild Mouse roller coaster at New Pike in Long Beach, California, but other accounts claim that it was inspired by other European coasters at the time, in particular in Germany. There was also some other updates that were added to the ride to try and improve the experience too. At the end of 2007 in November, which is the start of the off-season at the Pleasure Beach, an update was made to replace all of the wood and repaint the structure. Of course, you can online still buy some of this new wood that was put into the Wild Mouse in 2007 and before. And of course, since that point in 2007, the paint really did wear down, of course. And it would reopen in the summer of 2008. And then, at the end of 2016, at the start of the off-season, magnetic brakes were fitted during the final brake run into the station, because previously, similar to Blue Flyer pictured here, you had to manually pull the brakes. Of course, you can still see that operational in Blue Flyer, but no longer in Nickelodeon Streak. That similarly got some new magnetic brakes. And the coaster would then reopen in April 2017, but then proceeded to have many issues, and more than it did with the manual brakes. And of course, potentially the closure of the ride was down to this change, and it was the park's fault that it closed, because of course the magnetic brakes were having some issues, and of course that poses a danger. And really, they should just proceed to have the manual brakes, because the staff members can work them, they're not too hard to do, and they still use them in the park today. And then the closure. This happened in August of 2017, and it started by saying there was maintenance issues, or it was just not working on that day. Sometimes they would say that it was a chain lift that wasn't working, and other times the brakes were faulty. And the park said that it was ordering in repair parts for the ride. Of course, from that point, the ride was no longer in-house anymore. It wasn't this homemade coaster. And of course, when I went in the Halloween section of the season in 2017, they did just say that it was closed for no reason, and it was just going to get repaired for next year. Then, in the off-season of 2017, the ride was then dismantled. It was confirmed in 2018 that it would no longer be returning to the park, and this was done alongside Trauma Towers. I do believe it was actually the off-season of 2018, so I'm sorry about that. And of course I did do a video on the history of trauma towers, so if you want to check that out you can. And of course these were both dismantled with hardly any notice. Of course trauma towers have been in standing but not operating for a long time. It had been there since the end of 2008. And both attractions were said to have been demolished for future developments, although there have been no announcements made as to what will be happening with them, and nothing much has really been done to them apart from returfing the area where trauma towers would be with some artificial grass and some seating. And as of its closure, it was one of only one of 4 wooden wild mouse coasters in the whole entire world. And here on the historical confirmation sign, one can be seen at Frontierland in Morecambe, Dreamworld, Gold Coast, Australia. Of course, there are the, other one. I do believe that since that was put up, that one was actually demolished. So really it was potentially, would have been one of 3 if it was still open. And for the future of the lot, so far the lot has only been used as part of the hub, which is a sort of outdoor sort of events area where for Oktoberfest they'd provide beers and pretzels and drinks. Of course it wasn't the most major part of that. Some parts of it were in the Trauma Towers lot. It has been used for storage, especially after the Journey to Hell Freak Nights, and it was also part of the Journey to Hell Freak Nights event. So after, the 2019 version of the Freak Nights, and it will be returning this year, if you looked over, where River Caves is, of course you can see the wild mouse here, you could actually just see the top of one of the props used in one of the horror mazes. And it is currently boarded off from the public eye. Of course, it isn't much of an eyesore, really. You can at this point, I can hardly remember the wild mouse being there, in all honesty, because I've kind of just covered it all up. And no one has currently been seen or recorded observing or entering the site. I haven't seen anyone doing any sort of maintenance or security checks on that lot. And current speculation states that it will remain the same way. It is a very small lot. It's just a rectangle or a square, depending on which way you look at it. And it's only really big enough for maybe a restaurant if they wanted to have another Burger King, or maybe if they wanted another sort of restaurant, if they wanted an Italian restaurant or an Indian restaurant, I suppose they could have that there. Maybe a small junior coaster, which would probably give them, a similar situation to what it was before with a wild mouse, because it is, after all, now the perfect lot size for a wild mouse, because that was the size it was intended to be for. So I think they might be a bit stumped with that. Or a minor event holder similar to the hub. They might just continue to use it for Journey to Hell Freak Nights, or maybe have a sort of permanent fixture for a walk for attraction, although that would similarly put them back in the same situation as Trauma Towers. And yeah, that's really it for the history. There's not too much accounted on it. I'm sorry for any stutters in this video, but if you did enjoy this video, then you can actually check out my other 2 history videos. I did one on Trauma Towers, which is kind of like the sibling of this ride when it comes down to being demolished. And of course, that has a more in-depth history and is very interesting. And I also did it on the Ghost Train, which claims to be the most haunted in the world, and also claims to be the first ghost train in the world too. So if you'd like to check them out, please do, and I hope that you learned something new from this video, and if you did, make sure to like, comment any suggestions or feedback, and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it, and I'm really grateful for the support that has been coming through. So yeah, this was Just Talking, bye bye.